very special guest with us today, Mark Bego, a great writer, and Debbie Campbell. And I'll introduce both of them to you in just a second here. But before we move on any further, today or yesterday was the anniversary of the passing of the great one, Jackie Gleason. And as I watched some of the old newscasts about the passing of Jackie Gleason, I just realized how sweet it is and how much I enjoyed The Honeymooners. So before we talk about any of the books that you guys are writing together or otherwise, what was your take on Jackie Gleason, and did you ever watch The Honeymooners growing up?
I have to answer that. Well, Debbie and I are nearly the same age. I will get to Debbie's answer, but I remember as a kid watching The Honeymooners, and I, at the age of 5, had the Honeymooners coloring book.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that they had one of those.
That was a big deal, The Honeymooners. Do you remember it, Debbie?
Yeah, I do. I watched it, yep.
Yeah, that was a
great show. That was one of the first really great sitcoms that I recall from the 50s.
And I think everybody can quote one of the lines. I'm calling Bellevue because you're nuts. And my dad...
To the moon, Alice!
Yeah, my dad...
Exactly.
My dad was a bus driver, and he was just like Jackie Gleason, the gruff voice, saying really odd things. You know, I can't explain it to you, but there are living people that are just like Ralph Cramden that are out there amongst us. So be afraid. Be very, very afraid.
Right.
We're talking with Mark Bego, who's...
What kind of bus did your dad drive?
What
kind of bus did your dad drive?
He drove the commuter buses in and out of New York City.
Okay, all right.
And so his last run... Oh, I was dating my wife at the time. This is a funny story. And we're going towards 7th Avenue, right about 8th Avenue or 9th Avenue. I see a bus as I'm heading east trying to parallel park, and I go to my girlfriend, my girlfriend at the time. I go, you know, there's only one a-hole in this whole wide world that would try that move. She goes, who's that? I go, my dad. Sure enough, it was my dad when I got up there. He was the only one that would ever attempt such a thing. But anyway, we're talking with Mark Bego, great writer, along with Debbie Campbell. You have a famous father, and together you wrote an incredible book. So why don't you, Debbie, go first? Tell us a little bit about yourself, who your dad is, and a little bit about the book that you wrote with Mark.
Okay, well, my dad was Glenn Campbell, and fabulous musician, singer. He had all the talent, yeah. And I traveled with him for over 25 years, singing with him, taking care of him on the road, golfing with him, playing cards with him, just having a great time. And Mark and I wrote about my journey of being the firstborn daughter, and then my journey of actually becoming his best friend, because, you know, Dad was on the road so much his whole life. And so all the kids, you know, he was kind of like not an absentee father, but he just really didn't know how to have a relationship with kids because he was always on the road. And so Mark and I wrote Life with My Father Glenn Campbell, and it's just my journey of how I ended up, you know, becoming Dad's best friend. And we had, you know, I remember the first time he said to me, wow, so this is what it's like to have a relationship with one of your kids. I mean, we just had so much fun together. We were so much alike in so many ways. And, and now I am carrying on or trying to. He used to have the Glenn Campbell Good Time Hour, so I've started a little YouTube show called the Debbie Campbell Good Time Show, where I'm interviewing different artists, not necessarily talking about Dad, but of course Dad always comes into play with all these artists because most of them grew up with his music. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, I'm just going to go like a rhinestone cowboy. Bum, bum.
Exactly.
I mean, you know, how can you not sing along to that song? But I think his musical career is a lot more expansive than most people will think. I can remember reading about him as being like a rock and roller type of dude, too. So tell us those things that people don't know about your dad in his musical history.
Well, gosh, he was, you know, a huge studio musician in L.A. He's played on everybody's records in the business back then. And, I just lost my train of thought real quick. I don't know why.
I'm just going to jump in and add to that a lot of people don't realize he's on all the Mamas and Papas songs.
Yeah,
some of the Monkees songs, Sonny and Cher's songs, Frank Sinatra recordings, even Elvis Presley's Viva Las Vegas. So whether you think you are a fan of Glenn's music just for Glenn, you're also a fan of music that you love that he played on.
Right. That's
so
what.
His scope as a musician went so much farther.
We're talking with Mark Bego and Debbie
Sammy
Campbell.
Davis Jr. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
sorry,
what I was.
I'm sorry, Zach.
That's okay. Well, this remote broadcast stuff goes along with the territory, but that's what I was getting to. How many people know this? Show of hands. It's rhetorical. How many people know this? That Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin actually played guitar in Downtown for his friend Petula Clark.
Wow.
That's what I thought. Right?
That's a new one on me.
Yeah. How many people know that Petula Clark visited John and Yoko in their hotel in Canada? I guess it was Montreal. And she is one of the vocals on Give Peace a Chance. See? So my point being is when we talk about Glenn Campbell, there's so much more to the musical story side. There's so much more to the being a father side.
Especially the Pet Sounds album.
Thank you. Talk about that.
Yes.
Mark or Debbie, you could talk about the Pet Sounds.
Well,
I just know that Dad played on it.
What's that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm interrupting you.
No, you go ahead. No, Mark, go ahead.
No, everyone, rock and rollers just look to that album as such a classic, such a a high point in rock and roll and the '60s, and how amazing that Glenn was right there. I mean, he was right there for so many musical high points in records we still listen to, and then became a huge star on his own. Few people get to do it that way, and he was just amazing. What an amazing player.
One thing amazes me is I can't believe Dad is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, that is such a joke.
I agree with you.
They drive me crazy. They miss the chance to put people in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame who deserve to be there while they're alive. They'll do it, 20 years from now or something ridiculous.
Yeah,
right.
That's probably when I'll get into the Broadcaster Hall of Fame, when I'm long dead pushing up daisies. Listen, if you're listening, don't do me any favors. I'm not interested in adulations long after I'm gone. I want to hear people love me while I'm still alive. That's bogus, man.
Exactly. That's kind of like Tanya's new album. Bring me flowers when I'm alive. I know that's not how the name of it is, but it's like, don't bring him to my grave site. Give him to me while I'm here on Earth.
Well, we have the musical side of
enjoy them. Yeah, absolutely.
We have the musical side of Glenn Campbell, and then I know that there's the personal side with you and your dad. And there's always a special bond between a father and his daughter. Like my daughter Sophie is right here. She comes to work with me every day. She sits in a rocking chair. She listens to her music. She's observing everything I do. And by the way, that's a throwback. It used to be, growing up, you watch your parents work, especially your dad, traditional household. Dad's a mechanic, go to dad with work, pump gas at the gas station, whatever it is. And as we moved along with the technology and two parents having to go out to work, then kids are left at home with maybe grandma or some other situation. So a lot of people have never gotten to work with their parents. But I think during COVID-19, that's becoming popular again. Talk a little bit more about those special daddy-daughter moments that, when you think about them, like, man, I'm glad that I was able to experience that with my dad. And I would urge fathers and daughters to do that today.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I remember being on the road with Dad. I mean, we would sit in this divey little laundromat in Reno, because when we played Reno, we usually played there for a week or two at a time. And, of course, we got to wash our clothes, and it's too expensive to send them, to the hotel system. And so we would go down to this little divey laundromat in Reno and sit in there, and I'd wash our clothes while we just sat there playing cards,
That's cool.
So, and then golfing with him, of course.
Oh, that's such a great vision that I have of you two doing that and sharing, just sharing common things like that.
Was there anything?
And it was funny because Dad just had his little ball cap on. Nobody knew who he was. We're sitting. I mean, they're not going to think that Glenn Campbell's going to be in this divey laundromat. What I mean?
3 a.m. doing laundry.
I remember a funny story, a real funny story. He loves popcorn, and so do I. So he said, "I want to get some popcorn, honey." So we walked over to the movie theater, and it was Kids' Day. Well, Dad at one time had laryngitis, and the doctors had said, "You really can't talk, Glenn, or you're going to strain your vocal cords." So he learned how to talk like Donald Duck. So when he sees all the kids, he gets down like on their height, and he starts talking to Donald Duck to all these kids. Well, the parents are turning around seeing this man talk to their child, and they just got like freaked out. And I'm like, Dad, you can't do that. I mean, you know who you are, and these people, if they don't look right at you to see who you are. They just think you're some madman talking to all these little children, you know. I
like
said, you
Donald
can't
Duck.
do that. And I mean, it was so funny. Oh, my God. I had to, like, drag him out of there. But, of course, once the moms knew who it was, of course, then they're, like, wading through the children to try and get to him, you know.
That's
it's
great.
pretty funny, but.
Now, like all daddies and daughters, they get into trouble with mom. Did you two ever do something that really got on your mom's bad side?
No, because, you know, I was 4 years old when they divorced. So Dad and my mom weren't really around each other very much. But no, I'd have to say no to that.
You would spend summers with him, though, and go meet him in London. Or he would come meet you in London because you were going to school in England.
Right. Or when I'd go to L.A. and stay with him and Billy. But Dad was always on the road, so I'd be basically with Billy and the kids, you know. So as far as the question, did Dad and I ever do anything together that caused problems for the mom? No. I mean, that's no.
Well, you know, it's a good question to ask. I don't know, what happened with you and your parents. You know, just that's what I always want. Let me tell you what I did. I did this to my dad. When I was little, I was 2 years old. I took his brand new car and I drove it across the street into a tree, so I got in trouble for that. And I think it was more like
at
my mom.
2 years old?
Yeah,
At 2 years old.
Yes, I did. My mom saved my life. And then when he decided to buy a brand new car one day, it was a 72 Ford wagon. You know, the big wagons back in the day, like the Brady Bunch wagon.
Oh,
you know
yeah.
I'm talking about those panel wagons. A Town and Country, whatever it was. And it had the seats all the way in the back. It was beautiful white and had this blue interior, just an amazing car, electric windows, all these gadgets. And I liked playing gas station attendant. So he comes out, and there I am. I got the garden hose in the back of the car. I'm like, hello, Dad, I'm filling it up for you. And my mom,
oh, my God.
My mom had to, get him from killing me on that one. It's like, Eleanor, I'm going to kill this kid, you know. So those are the kind of moments. Yeah. I always had a good time pranking my dad. I mean, I love pranking my dad. Did you ever do pranks on your dad? That's always funny. That would make America's Funniest Videos.
No, I don't think I did.
And I don't think I have.
No.
Oh, that's so unfortunate. You could have easily got $100,000 for doing something like that. You know?
Probably just playing golf with them. That's more of a prank than anything because I couldn't play.
Gosh.
I couldn't hit the side of a barn with the ball for a while there, you know.
What are some of the books? What are some of the topics you discuss in the book? Gave you kind of trouble to write about. In other words, you really didn't want to write it, but you did anyway because you thought it was a part of the story that needed to get out.
Well, I think that I'd have to say, you know, Dad and I never fought about anything. I mean, we really got along great because I was such a good kid.
Yeah, you didn't drive his car into a tree.
The only right, exactly. But the only things that, like, one time, you know, he gave me his Suburban. He used to get these cars from, I think it was Chevrolet, and he had bought a new car, so he let me have his Suburban. He goes, now this is for you. This is for nobody else. Nobody else could drive it. Well, my son needed to go pick up something one day, and it was pretty big, and it won't fit in his car. And so I let him borrow my Suburban to go pick it up. Well, a lady ran a red light and went right into them. And was he turning left? I can't remember. But she hit them and threw them into a pole. I mean, it wrapped right around the pole. And if my son would have been in his car, he would not be here today. But all Dad could say was, I told you not to let anybody drive that car. And I'm like, Dad, you know what? If you want to get bent out of shape about this, that's fine. But my son's here, your grandson is here to tell his story, and he would have died had he been in his car. And the only reason I let him, you know, he was mad. He was mad because I went against him and let somebody else drive my car that he gave me, you know, and that was one of our only probably 2 fights that we ever had, you know.
Well,
that I know of my whole life.
That's not the worst I've heard. I mean, you know, that's what us dads do.
But it was pretty bad. You know, I mean, he was really angry about it, and especially when we got in a fight about it, he'd have a couple of glasses of wine, and Dad wasn't good with alcohol. He was one of those people that alcohol he just shouldn't drink at all. And so then that escalated, and I said, Dad, I think you need to go to, because we were sitting downstairs after a show or something, and I said, Dad, I think it's time, maybe you need to go up and call it a night. So he went upstairs. Well, then and our hotel rooms were always adjoining, so he could come in my room when he wanted and change my channel if he didn't like what I was watching or whatever, because I was always there for him. I was always there to make sure he was okay if he needed anything, food or whatever. And so he had taken a USA Today, and he wrote across it in blue Sharpie when I walked in my room, I told you not to let anybody drink. I'm like, I went over there to him, to his room, and I'm like, Dad, and I'm laughing. And he was not in a laughing mood. He was very angry, because the alcohol had escalated his anger, But so that's probably a story that I wouldn't want to have told, but in the context of the whole book, that was only one of two stories of me and Dad ever having any arguments about anything,
Well, it's good to share those things, because in all relationships, we go through that time where we do have those arguments, and we have to learn how to forgive and not necessarily forget, but put things in perspective and move on. Because when you forgive somebody, you can't keep reminding them of what they did to you, because then did you really forgive them? So that's a good lesson to take away from that. It's the truth. It's what happened.
Exactly.
And vicariously, people are going to relate to that. Mark, when you were writing this book with Debbie, what were some of the surprises that you came across about Glenn Campbell?
Well, his determination to keep his career going. I mean, it's amazing how many incarnations he had. There's a whole era where Debbie moved to Branson, Missouri to be with Glenn, and Glenn had the Glenn Campbell Theater there. One of the theaters was named after him. That was what so much of a fixture he was that they even named the theater after him. So what really fascinated me was Debbie's devotion to her dad, and not only singing with him on stage every night, performing in the skits and all the theatrics that went on in Branson, and his touring act as well. I think her devotion really was inspiring to me of what a parent-daughter relationship can be all about. And I don't know if a lot of people may not realize that Glenn was married 4 times and had children by each wife. So Debbie, as the oldest, was the constant. She was the one who was always there, always in the picture, and always very devoted to him. So I was really proud to tell their story.
Debbie, in response...
But I was also more devoted, too. I was also devoted, too, because I wanted my kids to be around a grandparent. Mm-hmm. My mom and stepdad were living in Germany, and so that's why we moved to Phoenix, so they could get to know one of their grandparents, and, that too. And then the reason we moved to Branson is because if I would have stayed in Phoenix and I was still working for the airline, if I sang with Dad for 3 weeks in Branson and then I flew my 40 hours trying to cram that in one little week, I would have never seen my family. So we all moved to Branson, and then it worked out really great because the school bus dropped them off at the theater, after school. It picked them up at our house, so it was really a great family type of atmosphere to where everybody won. It was a win-win for all of us,
We're with Debbie Campbell along with Mark Bego, and they co-wrote this book, Glenn Campbell, Life with My Father. What made you decide to write a book, Debbie? I have written one myself, and it's quite a task. It's an undertaking. Sorry.
When Dad got Alzheimer's, my stepmom took over and decided that she needed to get her kids fronted out there, while she could, because Dad's years of singing were diminishing because of his being diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So she fired Dad's band of 20-something years. And then I was the next person to go. She let me go because I used to, when Dad would go out and sing, and then he would call me out and we'd sing, and then he would leave for his potty break and let me sing a song or two, and then he would come back. Well, with me doing that slot, what's her kids going to do? So her kids would take over that slot once she let me go out of the show. And then she put her 3 kids, their band was at the time called Instant People. She put them in front of Dad, and they did their music, and then Dad would come out and do his stuff. Well, it got really, I've heard a lot of stories from reliable people that were on the road. They wouldn't even bring Dad into the venue until it was 2 minutes for him to walk on stage because he would get so irate because the music that the kids played was not the music that his people come to see. That was not his generation.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They're in their 20s and early 30s, you know, and the type of music just didn't coincide with the Glenn Campbell show. So, and it was a way of me healing, I think. It was like, instead of going to a therapist, I wrote my thoughts out on paper, and I am by no means a writer.
Mm-hmm.
And so, thank God I found Mark to help me weed through all of that. But it just was like a way for me to get through my pain of all the years that I spent working up to this beautiful relationship with my father to be all stripped away. I mean, and it was really bad, Zach.
Yeah.
I mean, they wouldn't even let me know. We had like a website where all the band members and their wives could go in to see where they were at and what hotel they were at and blah, 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 blah. I was cut off from that. I wasn't even allowed to go know where Dad was. And then also I wasn't allowed to have a backstage pass. So I just couldn't show up at a show.
Oh.
I mean, I remember in Little Rock, I showed up and I said, I'm trying to go back to see my dad. And she goes, well, who's your dad? And I said, Glenn Campbell. Well, if you're Glenn Campbell's daughter, why don't you have a badge? You know, I mean, I was so embarrassed. And Dad, when I told him about it, he was so irate. But he wasn't in control then anymore. It was the other people behind the scenes that were controlling the situation, like my wife number 4 and his road manager.
Ugh.
And, of course, they weren't going to do anything against what she said, you know. So it was kind of a way for me to get through the pain and everything. And it was more or less just writing stuff down and you know, telling my story of how, you know, I wasn't raised with Dad, and then we ended up being best friends through it all, and then the Alzheimer's diagnosis, you know.
I'm really sorry to hear that.
Pretty much why I wrote it.
I think that, you know, when you're involved with another person, you're going to get married, and it might be the second, third, or in this case, the fourth marriage. When people seem to be dating, they're on their best behavior, and they're like, oh, I would love your kids like they're my own. Exactly. And then when the rubber hits the road, they show who they really are. And it's unfortunate to hear that. So if you're listening right now and you're going to be a step parent, don't do that kind of stuff. It really is not nice, especially when you're starting to get between two people that love each other very much, the parent and the daughter, you know, whatever it might be. The Alzheimer's thing. When did Glenn start to realize that something was wrong? And the reason why I'm going to ask this is because as we get older, I think that we have to recognize the signs. And from what I understand, the earlier the intervention, the better off. I really don't know much about Alzheimer's. I know more about Parkinson's, but, you know, there's probably a lot of similarities. Can you give us a little insight about when he first started noticing, or who started to notice, and take us through that process?
Well, it's hard for me to say when I noticed, because Dad and I would be on the road so much that we'd be in a different car every day, you know, with a different driver. And so Dad would be telling the same jokes to that driver that he told the driver the day before.
That's
so
good.
I wouldn't have noticed anything different. He's just telling the same jokes to a different person, you know. But then my kids started saying, Mom, Grandpa's telling, you know, when we go out golfing with Daddy, Grandpa, he tells us the same jokes over and over. And then like 5 minutes later, he'll say the same thing over again. And so I said, well, don't bring it to his attention. Just act like it's the first time you've heard it. Because then I noticed with Dad that if he thought something was up, he would start getting anxiety. You know, he got anxiety out of it, I guess, realizing that something's wrong. And so then they had him on anxiety medication. I mean, I remember one time we were on the airplane over going to New Zealand. Well, you don't make any stops from here to New Zealand, and he wanted off that plane. He wanted off that plane. So the medication wasn't doing something, or he had too much, or what, I don't know. But he wanted off that plane, so it took a while for us to get him settled down with that. But I guess the diagnosis was like in 2011. But even before then, when they were living here in Phoenix, I went with Dad and Kim to the doctor at Mayo, and you know, he was, you know, analyzing Dad and everything. But you know what? When the questions that he was asking Dad, it's like Dad was an entertainer. He was on the road all the time. You know, I mean, he wasn't one of those people that knew how to turn on a computer, didn't look at calendars. You know what I mean? Everything was handled for him. Mm-hmm. So when the doctor would ask him things like, what season is it? He goes, well, it must be this because I don't need a jacket. You know, I mean, or you know what I mean? Like he wouldn't know what month it was because he just wasn't concerned with that kind of stuff, because all he wanted to do was sing and play golf. So the other stuff was like stuff that didn't concern him. Like, well, who's the president? Well, it's probably Obama now. You know, I mean, just the questions that the doctor was asking Dad, I would have not thought were anything weird with Dad's answers, But of course, that's how they analyze, their patients and everything. But I think probably before 2011, there might have been like a year and a half, maybe. I'm going to stretch it and say maybe 2 years before the diagnosis.
Right. And
2009, yeah.
What was your dad's reaction when he was cognizant of what was going on?
He's like, well, I don't have that. It was in denial. I mean, because sometimes he's great and sometimes he wasn't. So it's like, I don't have that. Are you kidding me? I mean, we'll just get through it, whatever. I guess more denial than anything, probably.
What if Glenn was still with us?
His mom and dad had dementia.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Zach. I didn't mean to talk
it's
over
okay.
you.
If your dad was still with us, what would be the message that he would give to people regarding how to live or how to overcome mistakes, or if you have a family and you're on your fourth marriage and there's dysfunction with the kids and the grandkids or whatever it might be, what do you think? What would he say about what went on with all of you guys?
Oh my gosh, he's probably up there like just sick to his stomach with everything that's happened since his Alzheimer diagnosis and everything. Because like Kim is his number 4 is 2 years younger than me. Mm-hmm. So, and that was my third stepmom, and I was older than all the other kids. So I just went with the flow because I want to have a relationship with my dad. So I'm not going to upset the apple cart. You know what I mean? But there were a lot of things through his marriage to Kim that I did not approve of that she was doing, that I knew she was doing behind his back, whatever. But I didn't say anything because, Dad's going to get really pissed and they're going to have a really big fight. But in the end, I'm going to lose.
Right.
That's his wife.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm going to, and then I'm going to harm my relationship that I've worked so hard to build with Dad and worked so hard for my kids to build with their grandpa. That would have just went all by the wayside. But Dad would, he'd talk to drivers and he'd go, I found a really good wife now, and even Debbie likes her, and it's like I'm biting my tongue in the back
and even
seat,
Debbie likes her. That's great.
Yeah, even Debbie likes her, But and it was important for him that I did, because we had such a great relationship. I mean, he said to me, gosh, if any of my wives would have been like you, hon, I would have only been married once, because I did everything for Dad.
Uh-huh.
I made sure he had food. I made sure his clothes were ready to go, because I was on the road with him for 25 years. So the 30-something years that Kim was married to Dad, we were on the road for 25 of that.
Now,
while she was remodeling her houses at every city that they've had, So, I bit my tongue quite a bit with her.
Apparently she's got a new book coming out, right? Or Kim's got a book coming out?
Yeah.
What's your feel? Go ahead.
From what I've read, she's not looking too hot. It's not. I'll be surprised, how it does, because from everything I'm reading on the internet, she's getting slammed left and right. In fact, the Daily Mail, I think they came out with an article in England, the Daily Mail, and the comment section was so saturated with bashing her so bad that they finally cut off the comments.
Oh, wow.
So,
I missed that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so I don't know.
What does she want to write about?
I don't know. I'm
specifically?
staying out of it. Huh?
What does she want to write about? What's her book about?
Sorry.
What's the premise of her book?
She's writing about their 35 tumultuous years and how he held a gun to her head.
Come on.
It's really bad. It's really bad. It's really trashing Dad. But yet, in the end, he was gentle on my mind, and I loved him so much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, if somebody holds a gun to my head, honey, I'm out of there. You know?
And the other thing too is if someone holds a gun to your head and you don't call the cops as soon as you get out of that, then you're the mentally ill one, right?
Exactly.
Right.
So
but remember, money.
That's how it goes. So. Kim,
the root of all evil. The root of all evil.
What are you doing next, Debbie? What's up?
Right now, I'm just doing my Debbie Campbell Good Time Show, interviewing people. It's a lot of fun. Everybody can go to the Debbie Campbell Good Time Show on YouTube. Check it out. There's 3 interviews up right now. Tony Orlando, Neil McCoy, Debbie Gibson.
Oh, wow.
Barry Williams from the Brady Bunch is up this Saturday. And then I've got 30 more people that I've already interviewed like 20 something, and I've got like 8 interviews coming up this week. But it's so much fun. I mean, I'm interviewing people from all walks of life, in the entertainment industry, not just singers, actors, whatever. I mean, I'm interviewing Danielle on Monday. She makes all the costumes for Dancing with the Stars and has done many costumes. You know, she did Debbie Gibson's last tour. You know, so it's just so much fun to talk to these people. And
you're going to have me on as one of your guests for sure down the road. I mean, you know, I got so much
I would love
so
it.
much insight, you know, to offer. and did you...
A famed radio DJ. I love it.
Did you talk to Barry about Johnny
Bravo?
Imagine
all the people that Debbie knows, you know, and has in her phone, having met all these wonderful people who came backstage to see Glenn. So you basically know the who's who of show business who were all friends with your dad, and now they're close personal friends with you.
Wow, that's exciting, man.
Yeah, but I'm not. I didn't start this show. You know, I didn't start this show to talk about Dad. I started to talk about the artists that I'm interviewing. But it's really funny how all the artists have some connection to Dad in some way. You know.
Oh, come on! If you grew up in the 70s, you have a connection to your dad because he was on television so much, right? I mean, he was part of our his Americana. I mean, it didn't.
But Zach, I was a military. My stepdad was in the military, so I spent time in Europe. You know, I was like away from Dad when he was doing the height of his career, pretty much, because I lived with my mom. You know, so I missed out on a lot. That Kelly Traven Kane grew up in all that part of Dad's life. You know, I just saw it in the summer or whatever. So, I mean, it's so much fun.
You were there when it mattered the most for your dad. That's the important thing. Now,
right, exactly. I have the memories. I've got the memories, Zach.
That's fantastic. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad that you have your talk show and doing things that you want to do. That's exciting. It's always exciting. And you look like your dad, by the way. Just want you to know that.
Oh, thanks.
That's a nice compliment.
Thank you. I'm doing the Mike Huckabee show August 7th.
Oh, really? That's cool, man.
Oh, wow.
Speaking of cool, we also got. Oh, go ahead. Tell us about Mike Huckabee.
No. Go ahead.
Yeah.
No. I wasn't. I don't know anything. I've never met him, but I was just going to say I'm bringing Dad's Rhinestone Cowboy outfit with me, and I'm going to put it on stage when I sing. I'm trying to raise money we want to get a bronze statue of Dad at the cemetery in Delight. Although right now with what's going on in the world, I don't know if statues are sacred anywhere. You know what I mean?
Oh gosh.
I mean, I was so sad to see that they desecrated Jimi Hendrix statue. I mean, that just made me sick.
I missed that.
It's even worse. They did it to Stevie Ray Vaughan too. Come on, Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Oh my! And the Unknown Soldier. I mean, come on. This is like ludicrous.
I can't believe they're not arresting these people. I can't believe it.
Well, you know.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it'll happen. Maybe.
Well, let's hope because
hopefully soon.
No, you know, it's one thing to peaceably assemble. It's quite another thing to cause war zones or whatever you want to call it and threaten people and beat people up and pull them out of. You're not winning over anybody by doing it that way. And let me just say this: I am a theologian. Mark knows this. I've studied this stuff. There is no way that Martin Luther King would be a part of any of this right now. In fact, let's go back to the incident in Minnesota. He would have flung himself on the cop and Mr. Young, I guess his name is. Doug, I forget his name. Everybody knows the name.
Yeah.
George Floyd, right? Is that his name?
Oh, George Floyd. Yeah.
Anyway, my point being, he wouldn't have taken a picture of the event. He would have flung himself on the both of them, not really worrying about what would happen to him, but to save both of them because they both needed somebody to step in. And here's the other thing, too. This should be a crime. I'm glad we're going to bring this up. This should be a crime when you sit there with your phone taking video of someone getting the crap kicked out of them or being abused or being murdered or being hit by a train. It should be a felony offense. What you should do, if you don't want to jump in there and help, you should be on the phone calling 911. You should get help. Too many of these, I am sickened by people that do that kind of stuff. In the middle of whatever crime is going on, they take selfies. That really is obnoxious. I mean, wow, talk about losing your way. And I'm sure your dad would be pissed off about that. He'd be saying something.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So let's calm down, everybody. Mark Bego, what are you working on?
Don't even start me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, this is what life's about when you talk. Mark, what are you working on? What's your next book?
Well, I'm thrilled to say that I'm working on Frida Payne's memoir.
Oh.
And I'm glad I have this book. People have said to me, what have you been doing while locked in your house during the coronavirus scare? Writing another book, of course. So I'm glad to have it. And Frida's got such a fascinating story, my goodness. She's been, used to sing with Duke Ellington, performed with Pearl Bailey. Frank Sinatra just loved her. She's got so many great stories and a lot of fun show business stories and some personal revelations to come.
We love the showbiz stories, and you know what we really love more than anything else? And Debbie, you can answer one question and Mark the other. Debbie, when you were traveling out with your dad, when you're on the road, right, what was that one place that you like to stop in? It could be anything. It could be White Castles. It could be Burger King. It could be McDonald's. It could be Taco Bell. What was your choice?
My dad's favorite store was Walmart.
All right, Walmart. How about that?
We've been in every Walmart in America.
That's exciting. What was his favorite food? What did he like to go and eat?
His favorite thing to grab when we stopped in a convenience store was a Payday. He loved Paydays.
Oh man, Paydays are one of the best candy bars of all time. Absolutely.
He loved it. Yeah. Yeah, he'd get one every time. Yeah.
Your father and I would have gotten along great, just grand, because we liked the same stuff.
He was so easy to get along with. Yeah. He loved hanging out with me and my friends.
That's
cool. It kind of brought a normalcy to him.
Mark Bego,
that makes any sense?
No, I totally makes sense. Mark Bego, have you been having food delivered to your house like those of us here in the New York area?
Yes. Well, my sister has commandeered the food distribution here, so she orders it online, goes to the store, they put it in her trunk, no contact with anyone. They hose it down with bleach or napalm or something, and then give it to me.
Oh my gosh.
Well, we're sort of getting back to, I guess, some normalcy. We can eat outside in tents, and some of the food places have opened up. But I will tell you something, a little secret. I found out that there's a terrific place to go on a Saturday morning for breakfast with my daughter. Guys, IHOP. Terrific. IHOP is terrific. I mean, Bego's ordering in. He's got his rock and roll recipe book, and Debbie, I have
reacquainted myself with Arby's recently.
Oh, Arby's. Yeah, that's good. See, we could talk about
those
food
curly
forever.
Fries are
yeah. And after all of this is over, I think we'll all have to lose our lockdown weight.
I've already started because I have to go back to work next month, and every day I go in and see if I can fit in my uniform.
Oh boy, there you go. Yeah, I hear you on that.
Well, I got to zip my skirt up,
Yeah,
I
hear you.
Yeah.